Welcome to the post-run commentary video of the hardest Spelunky run ever performed / Haunted Max Pacifist Chain No % Eggplant in a seated setting, not unseated. I'll explain more about that later. Before I begin with this whole thing, if you just want to watch the run and you don't want to hear me yammer about it and pause and explain what's going on, there's a link in the description. You can watch that video. It's the unedited run in full. No breaks, no edits, no talking. You can just click on that, see the whole thing. If you'd like to know a little bit more about how it was made, what each level is accomplishing, why we did certain things the way we did, and how hard it is and stuff like that, then this video is the one you'll want to watch instead. So, to begin with, I'll also write some stuff in the description, but might as well explain it. Haunted Max Pacifist Chain No % Eggplant. What does that mean? That's a huge jumble of words. The sort of brief synopsis is, you have to do the solo Eggplant run in Spelunky, which involves a lot of technical steps that I'll explain throughout this run. You need to do it in a chain low % setting, which is no additional items or pickups or anything allowed except for the ones that are strictly required. Those are the Ankh, the Hedjet, the Sceptre, and the Book of the Dead. Those are the only things that we're going to collect in this run. You might ask if you're familiar with book skip. What about doing a book skip? We could do that, but that's actually easier. The version for doing the regular route is harder. That's why we chose to do that for this run. Additionally, instead of just being chain low %, we've upgraded it to chain no %. No % also means that you cannot take any damage, you cannot use any bombs, you cannot use any ropes, and you cannot collect gold at any point during the run. This run is also a pacifist run. That means that at no point in the run can we receive credit for any kills, and that includes both of the boss fights that we're going to be doing, as well as some of the mini bosses that we'll be encountering throughout it. And then on top of that, we're also going to be visiting the Haunted Castle, the Worm, and the Mothership, all 3 optional areas. As a result of that, we'll be visiting literally every area in the game on this singular run, under all of those highly restrictive conditions. So that's the specifications for Haunted Max Pacifist Chain No % Eggplant, the hardest possible run without mixing multiple item varieties. So we didn't include shield in this because juggling both the eggplant and the shield is not really very practical. You could do that in maybe a tool-assisted speedrun, but this run was performed RTA by me, using a variety of seeds. So the methodology for the run, at first, seems suspicious, because as you watch it, you'll notice that in the top right corner there is a seed, and that seed changes every single level. Well, okay, so are we just hacking it together? Isn't that kind of cheating? Believe it or not, no. The way the Spelunky HD works is per level seeding. So you will receive a seed at the start of each level. That seed does not carry over throughout the entire duration of the run. When you load into a new level, based upon some stuff that I'm not super familiar with, you will be assigned a new seed for that level. That's believed to be manipulable, so if at some point we did have tool-assisted speedruns and we did dig into how seeding works, you could theoretically wait in level transitions to manipulate what seeds you received. But for the purposes of doing it in a human perform setting, we just use a program called Specs to forcibly insert the seed per level as you load in each time. That process in and of itself took quite a while because the levels that are necessary to complete this run are extremely specific by themselves. So it took a long time to find all the seeds that allowed this run to be possible, and I'll explain for the relevant levels what was necessary to find for the seeding, as well as why it was necessary. So that's pretty much all of the preface that you need to know. And then now we can start getting into the run itself and explaining what's going on. So for the first 2 levels, not too much of note actually happens. Sorry about that. These are completely regular levels. We don't need to do anything special for them. As a result, they're very, very easy. For any level of this variety, where we simply we're running through it, we just found a very easy, straight down level that doesn't force me to do too much challenging stuff. Now, upon entering 1-3 is where we first enter a level where there are some important specifications and some reasoning behind the reason that the level is what it is. So, first and foremost, to explain a concept that's going to be relevant both here and throughout the run, Shopkeeper aggro in Spelunky HD. It is misunderstood sometimes as when you anger the shopkeepers, they will be mad at you for the remainder of the run, no matter what you do. And while that is oftentimes the case, because of how it's programmed. There is actually a mechanism that allows you to be cleared of aggression from shopkeepers. That system works loosely as follows. I am going to steal from this shop momentarily. I'm going to steal the gift box to spawn an eggplant, and the shopkeepers are going to be mad at me. On the next level, I will not be able to receive de-aggro, as we call it. There's no way to do it. But on the level after that, the aggression level will be such that if I exit that level without having triggered the shopkeepers in any way, or anything else triggering the shopkeepers for that matter, I can receive de-aggro on that level. The level after that I can't, but then the next level I can. And it's an alternating set of levels every single time. You'll often hear speedrunners refer to aggro parity, Parity, and that is referring to the fact that every even number of levels later, you are able to receive de-aggro. And that's pretty relevant because certain alternate exits exist throughout the game, but they're generally structured in a pretty even sequence. So you want your shopkeeper aggro to be performed on a specific level to allow for de-aggro on those levels with alternate exits. So, as a result, the choice to get the eggplant on 1-3 is very specific because that allows us to get de-aggro 2 levels later on level 2-1. And when we get there, I'll explain how we achieve that, but just keep that in mind throughout the run. Whenever I receive shopkeeper aggro, 2 levels later is the first opportunity for me to clear my aggro by exiting the level without angering the shopkeepers. That's loosely how that system works. So, on this level, unsurprisingly, we are going to get the eggplant. There is the option to get the eggplant later. In fact, there is one level in particular, level 4-2, that is by far the easiest. It skips many of the steps necessary to do an eggplant run, but for the purpose of this seeded showcase, I thought it would be both more fun and more fitting to get the eggplant as early as possible. Well, not as early as possible, on 1-3. We get it very early into the run to allow it to be more interesting and fun to watch. So we do some basic shopkeeper AI manipulation here. By me standing on the same layer as him right here, he's going to run all the way to the right and fall down into future layers. As a result of that, I don't have to deal with him as much. Then as a result of that, we go over to the altar, which is on the right, and there's also an idol to its left. So we've obtained the eggplant. Now I have whipped that idol. I'm going to occasionally clarify, since it's a little important, didn't I just kill that cobra? Some would say I did. The important thing about pacifist rules is that they are based on the game's engine. I very much caused that cobra's death, but as far as the game is concerned, the idol actually killed the cobra. The whip itself doesn't impart ownership of items. I would need to pick up the idol to gain ownership of it, and then anything it does, I would be responsible for. But instead, I whip the idol, which not only makes me not responsible for it, but it also makes me not responsible for the boulder that will spawn shortly. And that boulder is not only used to potentially clean up some enemies, but it also destroys the altar. That's pretty important. And I'll explain why on the next level. So on that level, we needed a gift box, an altar, and an idol trap that was able to destroy the altar. That was a little bit tricky to find, but not too bad. Now, moving on to 1-4, I'm going to be very careful to make sure that that skeleton doesn't get in the way of me and my goals because I can't kill him. And then you're going to see, yet again, we have another idol. And of course, I'm going to, once again, whip the idol into another cobra, which I am not blamed for, while being careful not to get any kill credit. And then we're going to divert ourselves here, send the boulder to the left. As it crosses over, you're not going to see it, but there is an altar off screen to the right. And in just a moment, it's going to be destroyed. When it is destroyed, I receive the ball and chain. That's the penalty for destroying 2 altars, and that's absolutely critical for the next 2 levels. After doing that, we drop to this ledge to aggro the shopkeeper. This cobweb gets him stuck in place, and we move on to the next level. That level only needed an idol and an altar, which still is somewhat uncommon, but not too bad. Level 2-1 was definitely the hardest one to seed find for, because in conventional gameplay, getting to the haunted castle is a very simple task. But in this run, we need to get to the haunted castle under very, very strict restrictions. No percent, as I mentioned prior, is a modifier to low percent that also bans the usage of bombs. And conventionally, the way that you enter the haunted castle is to use either 2 bombs, which is nice and easy, or 1 bomb, which requires a skillful bomb throw. We can't do either of those things. YouTube comments will often cleverly recommend an orange frog, right? Orange frogs spawn in the jungle. When they're damaged, they will explode after a short timer. What you need to understand is that in Dead or Restless levels, there are no frogs of any variety, so you cannot use orange frogs to enter the haunted castle. You could instead attempt to find a chest with a bomb stored inside, but it's difficult to utilize that because chests also contain gems that you are not allowed to collect. So picking up the bomb from the chest to do that skillful bomb cook throw would be very difficult, and using 2 chests with bombs would certainly grant access to the haunted castle, but A, that's extremely rare, and B, that would really mess up the area with a lot of random scattered gems, and if those gems killed things, you could potentially run into trouble. Long story short, though, we have another method, and that is the ball and chain. The ball and chain, as I'm about to demonstrate, has a very crucial property. It's an anti-soft lock mechanism. When you are falling at a distance away from the ball and chain and it is above you, the ball and chain will attempt to destroy the tile beneath it, and that is to prevent the player from being super easily soft locked. As a result of that mechanism, we can use the ball and chain to potentially open the haunted castle entrance, but it's really tricky. So this process takes about 1.5 minutes if it goes pretty well, but it's very deliberate. Each tile that I'm breaking here has some purpose to it. So for the first part of this, we're sort of trimming the top tiles here. We're just bringing things down in elevation. It's important to remember that you need to make sure that when you're excavating with the ball and chain, you don't ever want to soft lock yourself. So you want to make sure that you can always reach back to the ball and chain on the other side without digging all the way through. Now here we're going to break this tile because the next goal is very specific. We want to break the 2 tiles to the right of that gate, so the one to the right of it and then one directly beneath it. And then we want to break a tile underneath that left cobweb specifically. And the reason why that needs to happen in that specific way is that that will allow me to climb back up to the haunted castle area if the ball and chain drops below, which it will need to do for the next few parts of the excavation process. But first, we manipulate this Jiangshi into the water so that we don't accidentally kill him as we're dropping down here, because we're going to do a Tarzan swing to achieve those specific block breaks. Then, with the path that we've created, we get through all the cobwebs, and now we have a way back up with the ball and chain, so we can continue excavating. One thing that would normally be a big problem is the gold getting in the way of the ball and chain. Thankfully, we can just pull it out of the gold pile, being able to pick it up again and move it. Obviously, we can't collect the gold. As mentioned, that is one of the restrictions of the run. And then we very specifically create a little platform here, and digging through here, we open the haunted castle up with the ball and chain. Like I mentioned, takes about 1.5 minutes. It could be faster if I didn't have to deal with some of the cycles on that spider, but it is just a very difficult process that took me a lot of time to get accustomed to. So that's how you enter the haunted castle in this category. Very, very tedious, required a lot of very specific seed finding, and you might hope that this next level is simpler, but it's not. Oh, and I almost forgot. Also important to mention that 2-1, as we mentioned, was 2 levels after we aggroed shopkeepers. So having entered this level, we now no longer have angry shopkeepers. They have forgiven us for the first time. Crucial detail there. This level is very complicated on a gameplay level, but it's not going to look like it. Instead of bogging you down with the details, we're going to watch it once in full, and then I'm going to come back to the start and explain exactly everything that's going on. It's going to seem very innocuous, but it's very specific. I will explain, however, one thing about the ball and chain, which you might notice that that ball and chain just killed that Jiangshi, and it did not violate Pacifist. Is that always the case? Well, at every level, when you start, the ball and chain can kill things, and it won't be blamed on you until you pick up the ball and chain. So you'll notice just there that I did pick up the ball and chain. So for the remainder of this level, if the ball and chain does kill anything, that will be my fault. But at the start of the next level, it will once again be reset to a pacifist state where it can kill stuff freely. That's pretty important for the way the level works, but once again, I'll let it run without interrupting too much more. So here is one of my favorite parts of the run. We utilize the mechanism of the haunted castle door itself. When you enter the haunted castle, that door closes behind you to sort of seal you inside and keep you from running around back out. You have to face the threats as they appear there. But that door is extremely convenient for the purposes of this run because the ball and chain, while extremely useful for excavating tiles, is also a severe hindrance to our mobility. And as a result, we kind of want to get rid of it as soon as possible. So in this context, we used it to open the black market entrance, which would otherwise require a bomb or some other orange frog or something. And then immediately crush it with the door. Now, that in and of itself is actually very specific. The location of the black market here is absolutely critical. The tile that it's currently on and the tile directly to the right of that are the only two tiles that the black market can spawn that allow you to do this strategy. And that might seem strange, but think about it for a second. I was fooled at first too, but then I came to this conclusion. If the black market is on the outside, you can use the ball and chain to open it, and then enter the haunted castle to crush it with the door. But then you're locked inside with the black market being outside, and you have no way to escape. So that doesn't work. What about if the black market was inside the castle but further, right? Well, you could bring the ball and chain over in theory and then open the black market door, but by having entered the castle, the door is already closed and there's no way to open it up again, so you won't be able to crush the ball and chain. So to take full advantage of this concept of a strategy, the only way that you can do it is to have the black market spawn on one of these two tiles, because you can break the black market without having fully entered the haunted castle yet, and then move the ball and chain in position and enter it to then crush it with the door. So that's a very specific aspect of this level that might not be obvious at first, is that the black market can only spawn on these two tiles. Now, on top of that, this level is probably the best example of very specific AI manipulation that needs to occur in some parts of this run. This is by far the most particular. If you look ahead to this frog, he spawns starting at the center of this tree branch. He's standing on the top of the trunk. As a result, if he is to hop to the right twice, he will actually position himself around the area that I'm standing in this frame. And if that happens, I will not be able to complete the level. There's no way for me to avoid either taking damage to the frog or killing the frog. I can't avoid that. There's no way for me to get past that. Something will go wrong if he gets there. So it's absolutely vital and critical that the frog goes to the left. On top of that, you can see below me, there is a Jiangshi also on his own tree. That Jiangshi needs to go to the right. If he goes to the left, once again, I won't be able to complete the task I need to on this level without either taking damage or killing the Jiangshi. So, how do I accomplish this? Well, you might think that for the frog, the easiest option would be to simply go on the left side of the level, but you can kind of see down there, there's a gold bar on the only platform that I can land on. And as a result, that's pretty sketchy and risky, not super fond of it. So instead, what I decided to do was use the ball and chain to dig down, drop onto that Jiangshi and kill it, pacifist style, like I mentioned previously. Then, cautiously dropping here in a way that the ball and chain doesn't tug me around or hit me, because let me tell you, the one thing that hit me the most in this run was the ball and chain. It can damage the player by falling, so you have to be very careful. The frog jumps to the right when I land here, but then I move over to the left to maneuver the frog out towards this direction. Once he's over here, he's pretty safe at this point. Very rarely he can move from that position to the right, but once he's there, you're pretty much good to go. And then I cross over the top part and drop on the right here to manipulate the Jiangshi over to the right side of the area. And then once he's dropped down to the bottom of the tree, he's also pretty much safe. And at that point, I can safely descend down here. And you might have noticed there is a fish in that pool that dies. Once again, that's not blamed on me. This one is just kind of a limitation of the programming, keeping track of what specifically was responsible for destroying tiles, and then those tiles being responsible for the water being destroyed. It's pretty complicated. The game doesn't keep track of it. So as a result, if any fish dies as a result of water deprivation, let's call it, that's completely pacifist. You won't be blamed for it. And then, of course, at the end, just bringing the eggplant and the ball and chain over, breaking open the black market entrance, getting the ball and chain in place, and then crushing it by entering the haunted castle. And then as one little treat, a little gag, that Green Knight is dead. That's a little glitch called idle state clip when they drop on doors or other intangible tiles of some varieties. They just clip into the tile to the right of them. And don't worry, it's pacifist. So the black market level itself is honestly not perfect. This is one of the levels that I was getting a little impatient with because it was pretty fully manual seed finding for this one. It's not bad. It's still a pretty darn solid black market, but it does actually have some RNG to it that potentially ends the run. First of all, we perform man trap strats here. What are man trap strats? Well, the man trap is an enemy that instantly kills most things. It eats it, they are dead, they're gone. Shopkeepers are different. When a shopkeeper gets eaten by a man trap, they break free after a certain period of time. However, if you were to immediately allow the man trap to eat something on the frame that it wakes up, the shopkeeper doesn't break out immediately, and you can chain this onto multiple shopkeepers. You see, the thing is, it doesn't have a counter, it has a binary flag. So, despite the fact that we put 2 shopkeepers into this man trap, when they break out, only 1 shopkeeper will be present. And although that kills the man trap, we actually aren't blamed for that kill. So you'll see the shopkeeper will pop out in that position. I placed the man trap there because as a result of where we're going to be standing and doing things in the black market, he actually won't exit that cubby. So now we need to manipulate this frog into getting killed by the tiki trap. It goes pretty cleanly here. There's some RNG to it. Sometimes it's a hassle. And then we steal the Ankh, one of the necessary items for chain low percent. As you can see, the shopkeeper in the top is now trapped in that cubby, and we're going to wait for these 2 shopkeepers to sort of sort themselves out. After a little bit of time, either they will kill each other or the tiki trap will kill them. Once one of them is dead, I can do AI manipulation to bring the shopkeeper either into the Ankh shop like he did there, or over to the tiki trap where he'll die. Then I come back to retrieve the eggplant, and at this point the black market's pretty much solved. The remainder of it is very, very easy. There's nothing dangerous down here. So now, having completed the black market, the jungle is pretty much done. It's arguably the most eventful part of this run, especially for Spelunky speedrunners. They've seen a lot of the stuff that we're going to do later in the run quite a lot. But this no percent haunted castle black market behavior, very specific. On the topic of the black market, you'll notice that we once again have angered shopkeepers. We did that on level 2-3, which means that at 2 levels in the future, on level 3-1, we have the ability to de-aggro, and we're going to do that. For the last jungle level, not much going on. We don't need to do anything in particular. We just have to exit. Pretty simple. So for level 3-1, we're going to begin going to our next special area, which is the worm. The worm is pretty simple to access. All you have to do is find the damsel, in this case a dog, on the level, and place it on the worm tongue to be able to access the worm. Now, under normal conditions, that's not too bad. However, in this category, that can be very, very tricky. We can't use any ropes to navigate the level. We cannot allow the damsel to die in certain ways, and we also need to carry the eggplant with us. So if you don't have a really nice worm tongue set up, there are a lot of problems. Juggling the damsel with the eggplant is very difficult. Sometimes the worm can be suspended over the abyss, in which case the damsel will most likely die and be blamed on you. And if the worm tongue is placed significantly above the damsel, you would normally need to use ropes to get back to that. So while it wasn't particularly hard to seed find, it might not be obvious exactly how important it is to have a really good worm tongue in this category, because if it's not in a good spot, you're pretty much destined to lose. But of course, it's right there. Very easy. So I just use this landmine to set up the terrain better, put the damsel there, and then collect the eggplant. And we do shake the damsel off the worm tongue in this category because one of the restrictions I mentioned, you can't gain any additional health in low percent. I don't know if I actually said that, but that's a restriction, just so you know. If you leave the damsel on the worm tongue, it will give you 1 HP in this level transition. And, very exciting news, the category tracker has now officially declared that this is Haunted Max Pacifist Chain 0% Eggplant. Awesome. So the worm itself, it's fascinating because this level in unseeded contexts, I do run categories that are similar to this without the eggplant. I run max pacifist no percent, unseeded. And in those contexts, I do not run the worm normally if I can at all avoid it. I use a UFO laser to drill through the level to be able to have consistent and easy access through all of it. But this worm is different. We decided to do seed finding for the worm. Gary, who worked on this with me, did a ton of the seed finding and programming necessary to do all the seed finding. Huge shout outs to him. Generated 6,000 worm seeds and counted the enemy counts of each. This is the worm that had the fewest enemies, and you might think that that single-handedly makes it amazing, but also keep in mind that the level generation is very important, and the generation of gold pots and chests and stuff is also important since we can't pick up any money. And just brace yourselves for how impeccably perfect this worm is. It does not get better than that. This worm is completed in under 20 seconds, which, for reference, max low percent, a category with no restrictions other than beating the worm without any extra items. Getting sub 20 is considered an extremely, extremely good worm completion time. Doing that in this category is pretty ridiculous, even in a seeded context. This worm is basically as perfect as it gets. Super, super ridiculous to play it. It feels illegal in a way that this exists, but it's a real worm. You can play it yourself too. So yeah, that's honestly one of my favorite parts of the run, is how ridiculously good this worm is. And forgot to mention it again, terrible job by me, but you notice that we exited 3-1 without angering the shopkeepers. We took an alternate exit. On that level, we once again don't have shopkeeper aggro. That's why he's not at the exit. So for the second time on this run, they have forgiven us. So this next level is pretty notorious in the category max no percent, a category completed by 3 people so far. Entering the Mothership without using ropes or bombs is extremely uncommon. You generally don't have much ability to make it happen, other than simply having access to landmines and UFOs, although in Pacifist, you can't use UFOs, you're not allowed to kill them. So you only have access to landmines in this category. Starting out, I do a very subtle manipulation that I honestly don't totally understand how it works, but by standing in this position, one of the UFOs gets killed by this Yeti walking onto the landmine and launching gold everywhere. So that saves me some trouble. And then, how convenient, this is the perfect level gen for max no percent. Get a landmine with this sub-room combination, and you can literally just walk in for free. So the Mothership itself, while not as pristine as the worm, is also very good. Now, if you were watching the chain low percent eggplant unseeded attempts that I did just a little bit ago, a month ago, in fact, you will recall that I would come to this level not just to do the Mothership as an extra challenge, I was doing it to obtain the robot from a coffin in this level. Seeded mode runs are different. The robot will not spawn in the Mothership. We're not here to collect the robot. We're actually going to get the hired hand on the next level. We're just here to satisfy the conditions of max, which is worm and Mothership. This level is also an extremely good example of one thing that you should know about Spelunky speedrunning, which is that if you can get to the door quicker than something can kill you, that is perfectly valid. Everything here is extremely dangerous, but once I hit that door, I'm safe. Home free, everything's fine. So this next level is very interesting. One thing that is important to note about Spelunky is that while the Moai normally spawns on the 2nd or 3rd level of the ice caves, there's a special condition for it where if you go to the worm and then go to the Mothership, the Moai will spawn on the level after the Mothership. So we need to deal with that. If you're not entirely familiar with eggplant runs and Spelunky stuff in general, the Moai level is a huge problem because what your responsibility is that you have to die with the Ankh to enter the Moai statue, and then you will receive the Hedjet item, which was crucial to chain low percent as I mentioned earlier. So how do you do that? Do you just die? Problem with just dying is that you drop the eggplant and you will not carry it into the Moai with you, thereby abandoning it and failing the conditions of that run. We have a variety of ways to potentially go about fixing this. One of them was demonstrated earlier in the run. That is the ball and chain. The Moai itself is a set of indestructible tiles with an opening in the center. The ball and chain is actually able to destroy those tiles. Originally, it was a glitch, but then it was solidified as a game mechanic by the developers. So the ball and chain is the first discovered way to do it. There are a few other ways, but for the sake of brevity, I'm going to explain specifically the way that we're going to do, which is to use a hired hand. So if we go a little ahead here, I'm going to navigate to the bottom of the level, past the Moai itself. You're also going to see I specifically drop a rock down. That's going to be relevant. And then when we descend down here, we see there is a hired hand shop to my right. So how do we use the hired hand? Spelunky 2 players might think it's as simple as just giving the hired hand the eggplant, but in this game, they're a little bit different. First of all, they're terrible. They're extremely bad. If they do anything in any context, it very frequently will end runs such as this, because they'll attempt to pick up gold, they'll get themselves killed, they'll destroy the eggplant. Pretty much anything they do is bad. So the goal of this run is going to be to make sure they do as little as possible. Not only that, but they actually do not, by default, attempt to pick up eggplants. They can, and they will hold the eggplant, but they never make an active effort to do so. They only want to pick up other items, and also, critically, rocks. They do attempt to pick up rocks. So what we're going to do here is a technique called bin swap. And the idea behind bin swap is abusing the collision detection engine in Spelunky HD. The brief version of it is that collision detection is not done on a global scale. Not everything is being checked all at the same time in every position. They're being checked in smaller relative spaces that are 4 by 4. And we're going to abuse that because the order of those checks can cause strange collision behavior at their boundaries. So I'm going to place this eggplant right here. I'm going to place it on the left side of that tile because that is the boundary of a bin border. And that is absolutely crucial for this strategy to work. The eggplant is on the left, and then I'm going to come over here and grab the rock, and I'm going to place it to the right of that bin border. And then I'm going to move a pot out of the way because it has a sapphire, which is annoying. Place a landmine there, and steal the hired hand for our third aggro. The shopkeeper's going to fall in the abyss from the landmine. So I place the hired hand here, and he picks up the eggplant specifically. Now, the reason that that happens is because bin border collision detection is performed from left to right. So actually, if I tried to go over there and stand kind of on the rock, but like barely touching the eggplant and pick up the rock, you wouldn't pick up the rock. You would pick up the eggplant because the game detects the eggplant first, and then it qualifies as the item that you pick up. We're using that same concept to trick the hired help. He's actually attempting to pick up the rock there. He's not interested in the eggplant whatsoever. But because of the positioning of the items in the bin border, the hired help picks up the eggplant by mistake. It wasn't his intention. However, he will continue to hold it. He doesn't decide to then discard the eggplant and pick up the rock instead. That's what makes rocks so critical for runs like these. They're the best possible option if you have a hired hand to trick them into picking up the eggplant. Now that's great, but what I'm going to do next might seem unintuitive. By default, you might think, okay, so now we want to put him somewhere and then we go and die while he's holding the eggplant. But more specifically, we're going to go together. So I died, and then shortly after, the hired help with the eggplant also died. Just to be abundantly clear, we are both dead. However, the way that certain deaths with the Ankh work in Spelunky is a little bit weird. They regenerate the player, and sometimes when doing that, the game doesn't quite understand that it probably shouldn't regenerate the hired hand, because it's kind of attached to the player. So as a result, you're going to notice when we enter this level transition, even though the hired hand we had definitely died, he's actually still there and also still holding an eggplant. This is because we died first. If the hired hand holding the eggplant dies, it's gone. And then when you die with the Ankh, he will not be resurrected. So by falling into the abyss, he falls a little bit slower than us because he's in our hands, which sort of delays by a frame. So we hit the abyss, then he hits the abyss. As a result, when we're resurrected with the Ankh, the game considers there to be almost like a ghost hired help. I don't know the exact specifics of it, but that's sort of the generalization of how it works, is that you get like a stored hired help with the same held item as you had before. And that brings him to this level, 4-1. And once again, keep in mind, because we stole the hired hand, we will be able to de-aggro on 4-2. But for 4-1, we have other business to attend to. In Chain Low % Eggplant Unseeded, I mentioned that 4-1 is the hardest level in the run, and that would generally be true of this run as well, unseeded. However, when you have access to seeds, you have a lot of benefits to it. The difficulty of 4-1 is that you need to get the hired help to hold either the Eggplant or the Sceptre, which you get from Anubis, and you need to put him in a location where he is safe and stable, won't get himself killed, won't pick up any gold, won't cause any problems, right? In general, that is very difficult to do. It usually requires, for example, in this situation, 2 ropes. I could place the hired help in that nook to the right of the entrance, place 2 ropes, and his AI will no longer be able to escape that pit. But in this run, we can't do that. So how exactly are we going to find a randomly generated safe spot that requires no ropes, no bombs, no gold, etc., etc. Well, you hear Prayers to Kali. You hear Prayers to Kali is a level feeling that generates a gigantic pit, and at the top of that pit is a perfect safe spot for the hired help. It is pre-generated, it will never have gold bars, it is fantastic. Now, in this category, with its many restrictions, it was still quite difficult to find valid Prayers to Kali levels, because either A, there would be traps that would mess with the hired help AI and make it dangerous, B, there would be enemies that I'm not able to kill because it's a pacifist run, and I'm also holding a hired help that I cannot drop, or C, there was gold or pots. It needed to be a very clean Prayers to Kali level pit to be able to continue. But not only that, I mentioned Anubis earlier and the Sceptre. I have to also be able to kill Anubis pacifist style without any resources, which is pretty uncommon. So this level was another one that was very difficult to seed find for. While the previous one with the Haunted Castle was largely Gary's effort, he had to make a very specific seed finder that I requested the criteria for to be able to find those levels. This one kind of fell on me a fair bit. I had to look through a lot of levels with Prayers to Kali pits and then find Anubises that worked, because it's just more practical to check those manually than it is to do some seed finding criteria for. So this one actually has, in my opinion, a very elegant Anubis. This crush trap is the mechanism through which we're going to kill Anubis pacifist style, because if Anubis gets crushed by a crush trap, that's not our fault. So Anubis spawns here. We can't simply move this crush trap to the right to hit him, because the AI manipulation, while possible, is a little too difficult with the space that we've been provided, especially with those gold bars in the way. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to move the crush trap to the right, which is going to graze Anubis, not damage him. Then we're going to manipulate Anubis into this hallway and climb all the way around. Now the situation has been flipped on its head, and it's extremely easy to kill Anubis. All I have to do is drop down, trigger the crush trap, and he's stuck in a position. It's important to note that the Sceptre can be crushed if you're not careful. The Sceptre spawns, I believe, towards the top left of Anubis. I don't know if it's top left or top right. But crucially, when you crush the bottom half of Anubis like we did here, the Sceptre is safe. So that's the easiest way to do it, generally speaking. And that's how we accomplish it in this run. This level, unfortunately, I did mention that this was largely an effort by me, relatively speaking. Gary was still critical to it, but I had to do a lot of manual checking, and I kind of blew it here, because while I found a good Prayers to Kali pit, and I found a valid way to defeat Anubis pacifist style, I forgot to check the exit, and this is actually an RNG check on the run. There's a tiki trap that's bullying a shopkeeper, and not only does that make it hard to exit the level when he's alive, but if he dies in a certain way, the exit can have gold placed on it that there is no way to remove. So sometimes I did actually lose to this exit. Also, this flying scorpion is really, really annoying, but it's fine. Relatively speaking, not a big deal for this category. So we now exit this level with the Sceptre and the Eggplant in hand. As mentioned before, this level will be an opportunity for de-aggro, and we're going to do that by exiting to the City of Gold door. But first and foremost, while it's right there and we could just leave, as mentioned, the hired help doing anything is terrible, so we're going to kill the hired help. And important to note, the hired help is a player, it's not an enemy. Their deaths are not tracked for pacifist stuff, so you can absolutely kill them in any way that you want. Having entered the City of Gold now without aggroing the shopkeeper, we have been forgiven for the third and final time. The City of Gold is silly. The City of Gold is inexplicably silly. For whatever reason, the Book of the Dead, the last item that we need to complete a chain low percent run, is locked behind a series of walls that you must bomb through to get. We can't use a bomb, and we don't have a landmine, so we're gonna go pick up that chest. I wonder what might be inside. Who knows? Nonetheless, as a result, we're going to be juggling both this chest and the Eggplant throughout the level, and we are going to specifically go to the left side of the City of Gold here. And the reasoning behind that is the way that the level gen is performed for that Book of the Dead room is different on either side. So you can see down here, where the video player bar is covering, there's a series of tiles that a mummy usually spawns on. He walked off. This platform is actually raised one tile higher than it is on the left side, and that's really important in this context. In regular speedruns, you can do what's called tucking a bomb, where you place a bomb and then you pick it up and place it again against the corner of a wall. When you do that, it actually blows up some additional tiles, and that allows you to get back out of the Book of the Dead room without using a rope from the right side, because it destroys an extra tile. With the chest bomb, which, spoiler alert, this chest has a bomb in it, we're not going to be able to do that, because tucking the bomb would require us to collect the gems in the chest, which we cannot do. So as a result, the only way to get out of the Book of the Dead room is to use the left side platform, which is one tile lower. So the bomb won't destroy as many tiles, but that's okay on the left side of the City of Gold, as opposed to the right. Also, complete aside, apparently, the angle of this ruby falling is perfectly seated. The mummy dies at the exact same time on every level in the exact same place, and the ruby moves in the exact same position. I just think that's fascinating. It always drops exactly there. So we're gonna move the ruby, we're gonna do an arrow whip here. That arrow whip is just so I can jump here and throw the chest down to the position I want it to be at. Then collect our eggplant once again, make our way over. And so now we're going to use the chest, open it up, and have the bomb destroy the wall. Now, in the City of Gold, shockingly, everything's made of gold. A bunch of gold is going to fling around, but believe it or not, standing right here, perfectly safe. There is a little bit of RNG to this part of the run. Sometimes a gold chunk lands on top of that arrow trap, which makes this part of the level a little bit more difficult. The previous attempt, I actually lost to that. It was the only time I messed that up. So you can see that failure happen at the very beginning of the video, unedited. It's not that hard, I just messed it up. But yeah, we are gonna go ahead and get into the Book of the Dead room. As you can see, like mentioned, the left side has that lowered platform versus the right side, and you can see I only make the ledge here. If we had placed the bomb on the right, the ledge would be 3 tiles up, which is too high to reach without a rope. So that's why we go to the left side of the City of Gold, specifically. And it's also convenient because on the left side, we have much easier access to the exit than we would on the right side. At this point, we've almost done everything we need to do, but Olmec is one last rascal. First and foremost, the Olmec fight, just as difficult seated as it is unseated. Spawns are not seated, at least not in a way that a human can manipulate. And as a result, you basically just do the Olmec fight in exactly the same way you do in regular runs, and that is very, very difficult, because he spawns tons of extremely fragile enemies that I am not allowed to kill. Not only that, but we need to kill Anubis too here in a very specific way. And that first stomp that we did has a 1 in 3 chance to produce spawns, which will essentially make what I'm doing here occasionally impossible depending upon what spawns. I can't take any damage to the spawns, I can't kill them. Olmec's off to the side. It's a huge, huge problem in categories like that. If you have a rope, you can solve that problem by simply climbing onto the Olmec instead of stomping him, but we can't use that in this category, obviously. So here, Olmec kills Anubis 2 for us. As Red Skeleton drops down. I've never seen that in any run I've ever done. Very interesting. And then there's one thing about this Olmec that is different from usual runs. It is exactly the same as any other run that does Pacifist Olmec low percent, except for one detail, which you're going to see in a moment. You can actually climb up here. When the platforms are low enough relative to the Olmec arena itself, you can jump from Olmec up to these. And I am picking up a chest. And what do you think's in the chest? It's a bomb. So, while the Olmec fight is going on, I'll explain why exactly we're using another chest bomb. Because it doesn't seem obvious, right? What do you need to blow up on the Olmec fight in particular? So, I mentioned at the start that Pacifist requires that we get 0 kills. That includes both Olmec and Yama in a Hell run. On any percent runs, Olmec is allowed to be killed because it's the only way to open that door that we know of. But in Hell runs, the Hell door is open. You don't need to kill Olmec to open the Hell door. So, what's the deal then? Well, in order to enter Hell, you need to bring a platform of your own. It doesn't have a platform for you to stand on. Olmec is generally, conventionally, that platform, but in order for him to be a platform, you have to kill him. He needs to hit the lava. We cannot do that. So, what's the alternative? In the Olmec arena, you will know this if you've seen anything about Bookskip, there are lots of push blocks, and those pushable blocks can be moved around, and they can also be pushed into the lava, and they do act as a platform. So an alternative to Olmec is to create a stack of 2 push blocks, push them into lava, and then use them as a platform to enter Hell. Problem solved, right? What's up with the chest bomb? That doesn't have anything to do with it. The problem is, in order to push it into lava, there necessarily must be no tiles in the way. So you need a pit opened all the way to the lava. Olmec is not viable for that. If Olmec is to destroy the tiles at the bottom of the level, he will then fall into lava because the tiles are gone. Makes sense, doesn't it? With an asterisk. There is some theoretical tech regarding that, but I'm not going to go into it here. So in general, you can't use Olmec to break those tiles. Olmec does spawn orange frogs though, and in theory, if you were doing a tool-assisted run, you could use an orange frog and have it be damaged by a cobra or a snail, then move that orange frog into position to blow up the necessary tiles. But in a human-performed situation like we're dealing with right now, that is completely impractical. It would take so many attempts to get that to line up in the way we need to do so. So, what other explosive do we have at our disposal? A bomb from a chest. That's the necessary element of the chest bomb, is to destroy the bottom layer without killing Olmec or needing a crazy orange frog setup. And then, after that, we push the blocks into lava, allowing us to enter hell. Of course, the process to get there is still pretty arduous and difficult. Anytime Olmec spawns things, I have to get rid of them without getting credited for the kill, which essentially means forcing Olmec to kill them for me. And there is a failure state that could happen if I'm extremely unlucky, which is the chest over there. If a cobra spawns in that position, you know, like the snake currently is, it could open that chest prematurely and end the run. That never happened to me, although I did have many losses to Olmec while attempting to complete this category. As much as I have practiced this Olmec, you can just get unlucky, and I got unlucky way more than I should have. Was very, very unfortunate. One of the failure states of Olmec is if a snake lands on his head. You'll see that I am constantly standing on Olmec to perform all of the things that I need to do. If a snake is there, I can no longer do that. And I also can't kill the snake. There is a workaround for this in standard categories. In Pacifist Chain Low Percent Hell, you collect an arrow nub in the City of Gold from an arrow trap, and that arrow nub can displace the snake without killing it. You can't do that in this category though, because I have to hold the eggplant. So unfortunately, if a snake ever spawns on Olmec's head, that's a run killer. And the mechanism that we use to get the chest, you know, that low hanging ceiling to be able to jump up to it, that actually works against us for that mechanic, because snakes can hit the ceiling and then fall on Olmec's head. They don't need to spawn in an angle that specifically lands on him. They just need to spawn in an angle that hits a ceiling above him. So while it's critical for this run, it also makes Olmec less likely to succeed. Very, very diabolical. Anyway, all that riffraff has been done. We are now done with Olmec. He doesn't do anything else. We have reached the bottom layer with our push blocks in position. All that's left to do is to get the chest, and it's a little awkward here because there was an extra gold nugget in the way, so opening the chest is a little bit clumsy, but it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of this run. We pick it up, we bring it down, and then by whipping it open, the bomb spawns. We need to be careful to not accidentally drop the push blocks though. I need to time that, and the reason why is there are magma men spawning in the lava below, so I'm staring down here for a reason. If you push the push blocks down into the lava, and then a magma man spawns inside of the push block, you get kill credit for that, which violates Pacifist. Luckily, there is counterplay for that. If we look at the lava pool, you'll see that magma men spawn per tile, and each tile has a cooldown. So once a magma man spawns on the tile that we're going to push the blocks down onto, there's a cooldown set, and we can push after that magma man hops out. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm waiting for this magma man timer to trigger a magma man on the tile on the hell door, which happens right now. Then once he hops away, I push the blocks in, knowing that the cooldown is active, and then I enter hell as quickly as I can to make sure that that cooldown doesn't elapse and I get unlucky. Now, in a normal category, unseeded, having completed Olmec is not really the end of the run. Hell itself is actually very precarious for these categories. But I mentioned at the start of this run that any level where we just have to go through it is going to be unusually easy, and that applies to these 3 hell levels as well. It is pristine, and thank goodness too, because Olmec was giving me a lot of heartache. It was nice to know that once I beat Olmec, I should, in theory, be done with the run, and I did actually, off of my first Olmec completion, complete the rest of it first try, so that's good. The Yama itself is also funny, and I will explain why once we get there. One last level. I wonder if this one's going to be hard. No, it's not. It's not going to be hard at all. So Yama was done in a similar way to the worm. Gary generated 1,000 Yamas and tracked the number of enemies on each Yama. The lowest amount of enemies that was found in those 1,000 seeds was 7. With an asterisk. You see, the enemies also included Yama's face, both his left and right hand, and the 2 minions at the bottom, Horsehead and Oxface. And blink and you'll miss it. That means that there's 2 other enemies. 5 are covered by those guys. There are 2 other enemies on this level. And if you watch the cutscene on the left, an imp dies. So there's actually only 1 enemy on this level after the cutscene, because the second enemy got killed by it. It's a vampire that's above Yama. So we're gonna do a very scary looking throw. That looks extremely reckless, but that throw just works. It hits Yama. He has been successfully struck with the Eggplant, which is the goal of the Eggplant run. Then we're going to do another scary looking Skull Whip, and I actually made a mistake here. Him spawning the Magman was not supposed to happen. As a result, I have to go all the way back and do the Skull Whip again, because I can't drop down into that Magman soup without definitely taking damage, which is, of course, not allowed. So we're gonna go all the way back over here. One question that gets asked a lot of me, and it's one of my favorite questions, is how do you defeat Eggplanted Yama Pacifist? He's at 1 HP. What do you do in order to kill him Pacifist style? Do you tuck him into Tikis like usual runs, or do you do something else special? The answer is hysterically simple. You go over to him, and you get him to hit himself. That's how you do a Pacifist Eggplant Yama clear. And that completes the run. Haunted Max Pacifist Chain No % Eggplant completed, seated by a human being. Very cool. So now, when I get a cool run and you cleverly with your YouTube comment button say, well, now do it Pacifist, or now do it No %, or something else. There you go, I did. I did do it, all those. I did all of them at the same time. Now you have to look really hard on Moss ranking to find something else to add to it, and I'm not gonna do it. This is it. This is as good as it's gonna get. So that's all there is to it. Once again, huge thanks to Gare Bear for doing all of the necessary stuff for rapid and automated seed finding. Like I mentioned, our workflow was, I gave him a set of criteria, he hard-coded a seed finder to find that criteria, sent me a big old list of seeds, and then I manually checked them to verify which ones were viable to do for the run, and then we kept going from there. And there are some inter-level influences that go on, mostly vaults, right? A vault can only spawn once per area, so if you generate a seed with a vault, and then use a second seed with a vault, it's not going to spawn 2 vaults, you're going to get a different level. So that was something that we had to consider as well while doing this. All in all, this project happened pretty quickly. It only took about 2 weeks from the creation of the seed sequence tool that let you have different seeds per level over time. So despite this being such an incredible, difficult run, putting it together took about 2 weeks for the 2 of us, but we were pretty regularly working on it too. So completing the run on my end, once we had all the seeds, took me, I think, about 4 hours, which was longer than I was expecting, believe it or not. It was mostly just because Olmec was giving me hard egg. I definitely made some mistakes throughout other attempts, but the biggest problem was Olmec. By far the biggest problem was Olmec. Everything else was something that I figured out and practiced ahead of time while we were doing the seed finding. Yeah, also a shout out to Kirby703, who had been working on this a long time ago with less effective tools, and still managed to get all the way to 3-4 apparently, which is pretty impressive. The project's now come to light in the modern era with much more effective tools for the job, and Gary, the powerhouse he is, creating automatic seed finders for all of the necessary conditions. If you watch that and you still have the question, will this ever happen unseeded? The answer is a little complicated. No, it will never happen under any circumstance, ever. It won't. It just won't. Like, there isn't even a chance. The universe will end before this run is completed unseeded. But at least it's completed seeded, and now you see all of the complex and weird specific things that you would need to be able to accomplish this run. So many things are so rare, but when you can get individual level seeds, you can put them all together to make that extreme rarity happen. Unfortunately, you can't do that unseeded, so it will never happen. But some of the lesser versions of this run will someday exist, performed by human beings. But they're already difficult enough as is. So this one, solidly off the table. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask. I don't reply to comments as much nowadays, but I'll make an exception for this video where I'll try to answer any questions that weren't cleared up by the explanations I gave in this video about how everything was done. So feel free. I'll try and keep up with it as best as I can. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. Once again, if you want to watch it without any pausing and talking and whatever, there is a completely unedited version in the video description. Also, if you would like to play this run yourself, you can. You'll need to go to mossranking.com, go to the Spelunky HD tab, click on Guides, and then go to the Resources page. On that Resources page, you'll download HD Toolbox, which is our speedrunner general tool program. Within it, there's a tab called Specs, which is a overlay, modding, testing, practicing tool that injects itself into the game. And on the Mods tab, you'll see the seeded mode. Enable seeded mode, add a level seed, and then you'll see an import-export box. You'll want to take the giant chunk of seeds that I put in the description at the bottom, copy that and paste it into the import-export field, and then it will populate all the levels and seeds for you. Alternatively, you can look at it manually from the video, but that's going to take you a lot longer. But nonetheless, you can play this run yourself if you would like to. It's pretty hard, but not as hard as some other things, honestly. Relatively, this is not the hardest thing I've ever done because the seeds are also good. But yeah, feel free if you would like to try it yourself. You have the opportunity to do so. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching the run. Hopefully you thought it was cool. I thought it was pretty cool. And yeah, I don't know if we'll ever do another thing like this again. Maybe we'll do the shield version. Don't count on it though. Cool. Thanks for watching. Watch other Spelunky videos or whatever else you want to watch. I don't know. What do YouTubers say? Like the video? I'm going to stop the video. That's what I'm going to do. Talk about liking videos? How about stopping videos?